The greatest mistake humanity ever made wasn't New Coke or the 2019 Cats movie. It was inventing the farm. For about 300,000 years, your ancestors were hunter-gatherers. And they were, objectively speaking, incredibly ripped. They worked maybe 15 to 20 hours a week, ate a highly diverse diet of wild game, nuts, fruits, and vegetables, and spent the rest of their time hanging out, sleeping, and presumably inventing the high five. They were tall, they had great posture, and their bones were dense enough to survive a minor mammoth stampede. Then, around 12,000 years ago, someone in the Fertile Crescent looked at a pathetic, tiny piece of wild grass and thought, what if I spent 14 hours a day breaking my back to grow this, and then ate absolutely nothing else until I died? This was the dawn of agriculture, also known as the Neolithic Revolution. And while your high school history textbook probably framed this as the glorious moment humans stopped wandering around in the dirt and started building civilization, the truth is a little darker. Biologically speaking, agriculture was an absolute, unmitigated disaster for the human body. In fact, if you look at it objectively, humans didn't actually domesticate wheat. Wheat domesticated humans. 10,000 years ago, wheat was just a completely irrelevant wild grass confined to a tiny sliver of the Middle East. Today, it covers roughly 870 million acres of the Earth's surface. How did a pathetic little grass achieve this? By convincing the smartest ape on the planet to do all of the work for it. We cut down dense forests, we dug massive irrigation canals to bring it water, we painstakingly pulled out weeds that competed with it, and we literally gathered animal poop to put on the ground to make the wheat grow better. The wheat didn't do anything but sit there while humans broke their backs serving it. If you were an alien observing Earth, you would absolutely assume the wheat was in charge. And serving our new plant overlords took a massive physical toll. Let's start with your mouth. If you look at the skull of a hunter-gatherer from 20,000 years ago, they have perfectly straight teeth and zero cavities. They didn't have orthodontists, or fluoride, or those tiny plastic floss picks that always break, but their teeth were flawless. That's because they ate tough, fibrous foods that required a lot of chewing, which grew their jawbones wide enough to actually fit all their teeth. Enter farming. Suddenly, humans are eating porridge. Specifically, wheat, barley, and corn. These are basically just massive piles of simple carbohydrates, which is to say, sugar. And the bacteria in your mouth absolutely love sugar. Almost overnight in evolutionary terms, human skulls start showing up in the fossil record with massive dental decay, abscesses, and missing teeth. Plus, because we were eating soft, mushy grain instead of tough mammoth meat, our jaws literally shrank. But our teeth didn't. This is exactly why you probably had to pay someone thousands of dollars to violently rip your wisdom teeth out of your face. Your jaw is basically a 1993 Honda Civic trying to park 5 SUVs. But it actually gets worse, because early farmers didn't have steel mills. They ground their grain into flour using stone mortars and pestles. And when you grind wheat between two rocks for hours, tiny pieces of stone and sand inevitably break off and get mixed right into your food. So, early agriculturalists were basically eating bread that had the texture of fine sandpaper. This quite literally filed their teeth down to the exposed nerves. So not only did they have cavities, but their teeth were flat, painful nubs. Then there's the rest of the skeleton. Before agriculture, the average human male was about 5'9", and females were about 5'5". After agriculture, men dropped to 5'3". Women dropped to 5 foot. It took us literally 10,000 years, all the way until the 20th century, just to get our height back to where it was before we started farming. Why did we shrink? Because we were practically starving. Sure, farming produces a lot of food, but it produces a lot of one specific type of food. If your entire diet is just corn or just wheat, you are going to be horrifyingly deficient in iron, zinc, calcium, and basically every vitamin the alphabet has to offer. Archaeologists routinely find early farmer skeletons riddled with a condition called porotic hyperostosis, which makes the skull look like a sponge, caused by severe anemia and malnutrition. Hey, speaking of terrible, painful mistakes, you should really subscribe to this almost dead YouTube channel. Seriously, the algorithm hates us, we have like 12 active viewers, and hitting that button takes half a second. Please. Anyway, if the malnutrition didn't get you, the animals would. Not by biting you, but by coughing on you. Before farming, humans moved around in small, nomadic bands. If someone got sick, the disease couldn't spread very far because there just weren't that many people around to infect. But once we started farming, we built permanent villages. We stopped moving away from our own waste. And more importantly, we started living intimately with animals. We domesticated cows, pigs, and chickens, which sounds great for making breakfast, until you realize that living in a poorly ventilated mud hut with a bunch of livestock is basically a VIP lounge for pathogens. Measles evolved from a virus that infected cattle. Flu came from ducks and pigs. Smallpox came from camels. By trying to guarantee our food supply, we accidentally invented the pandemic. And we can't forget the manual labor. Hunting and gathering was essentially just going for a long hike, picking some berries, and occasionally throwing a spear. Farming is bending over, weeding, harvesting, hauling water, and grinding grain for hours and hours and hours. Our spines evolved to walk upright across the savanna, not to be hunched over a patch of dirt like a human ? The fossil record of early farmers is just a highlight reel of slipped discs, severe osteoarthritis, and shattered knees. So, at this point, you're probably wondering, if farming ruined our teeth, shrank our bodies, gave us the flu, and destroyed our spines, why on earth didn't we just stop? If a hunter-gatherer visited an early farming village and saw a bunch of sick, tiny, toothless people grinding wheat in the mud while coughing up a lung, why didn't they just say, "No thanks, I'll stick to the berries"? Here is the twist. Agriculture wasn't a choice. It was a one-way trap. See, farming has one massive, unbeatable advantage over hunting and gathering. It produces more calories per acre of land. They might be terrible, nutrient-lacking, cavity-inducing calories, but there are a lot of them. And in biology, calories equal babies. A hunter-gatherer woman typically had a child every 4 or 5 years, because carrying multiple infants while constantly migrating is biologically and physically impossible. But a farmer woman living in a permanent village with a steady supply of grain mush could have a child every 2 years. Evolution doesn't care if you have a backache. It doesn't care if your teeth are rotting out of your skull, or if you're miserable, or if you're short. Evolution only cares about one single thing: how many copies of your DNA you pass on before you die. Farming allowed human populations to absolutely explode. A tribe of 50 tall, healthy, happy hunter-gatherers could simply not compete with a permanent village of 500 sick, malnourished, unhappy farmers. The farmers just out-reproduced them. When the farmers needed more land to feed their growing population, they expanded, cut down the forests, planted more wheat, and pushed the few remaining hunter-gatherers to the absolute harshest margins of the planet, like deep jungles and scorching deserts. We traded the quality of our lives for the sheer quantity of our lives. We became a wildly successful species on a macro level, by completely ruining our physical experience on a micro level. Today, we are still dealing with the fallout. We are walking around in hunter-gatherer bodies trapped in an agricultural world. Your body literally wants to move around all day, sprint occasionally, and eat wild plants and lean meat. But instead, you sit in a highly ergonomic chair for 9 hours staring at a glowing rectangle, and then you eat a bagel. This is what evolutionary biologists call mismatch theory. Our biology simply hasn't caught up to our lifestyle, because evolution moves at the speed of thousands of years, and we changed our environment overnight. So, millions of people now spend massive amounts of money trying to artificially recreate the hunter-gatherer lifestyle. We pay for memberships to gyms so we can lift heavy things and sprint on rubber belts, which our ancestors simply called surviving. We do paleo diets and keto to desperately avoid the carbohydrates that our agricultural ancestors worked so hard to invent. We buy expensive standing desks because our spines are literally begging for mercy after sitting in a cubicle all day. We are basically paying premium prices to simulate the exact life we had for free 12,000 years ago. Which is a pretty bleak realization, but hey, at least we finally figured out how to put cheese inside the crust of a pizza.